The reason the Cabinet Manual was produced originally was the problem of what would happen if there was a hung Parliament. And Gordon Brown thought quite naturally last February that there might be a hung Parliament, and he asked the Cabinet Secretary to write out the procedures for what happens in that eventuality. Now, if you talked to people about what happens about a hung Parliament, they would have said at that time, well, we all know about the conventions, well, what's happened in the past, we go by precedent. But the problem was the public didn't know, and why should these conventions and precedents just be available to a small group of people, but not to the general public as a whole? You know, in a democracy, surely we ought to know the rules by which we're governed. Now that was the beginning of the Cabinet Manual, and the rest of it has been drawn out from that, and based in part on the Cabinet Manual in New Zealand, which I think was introduced when they had proportional representation in the 1990s. So this lays out the rules by which the Cabinet and government work, and I think it's the first step, and a pretty big step, towards a written constitution, because these are rules which are, as it were, over and above those of the government of the day. The government can't change some of them. They are overarching, as it were, and I think it's a pretty big step towards a constitution. The piecemeal way is the way we normally do things, for better or worse, and I don't think there's any way to alter that. But the final resting point is unclear. What, for example, is our electoral system going to be? I don't think anyone can predict what it'll be in 20 years' time. What will the second chamber be like? Will it be elected, wholly elected, partially elected? Will there still be life peers by appointment? I don't think any of us know. What about the relations between the Lords and the Commons? Because if you have an elected Lords, then you really do have to define the relations between the two houses. You can't rely on convention and precedent anymore. What about our relationship with the European Union? Will there be more devolution? What about relations between central and local government? These are all matters in flux, I think. I'm not sure there's a correct method. That this was produced without much fanfare as a kind of cabinet manual, a kind of guide to what happens in a hung Parliament. And then it grew into something much bigger. And that is the way things are done. I think if you'd started out by saying we need to produce something like a constitution, people will have held up their hands in horror and said, no, we don't want that, it's far too big an exercise. But to do it in a partial way, you'll get it done.